All right, hello, and welcome to today's employer seminar for MiUI. We're so excited to share this information with you as we prepare for the launch of UIA's new system for managing tax benefits. My name's Melody, and I will be walking you through key changes that are coming with the MiUI system, as well as performing demonstrations and giving you reminders about how best to prepare. We have a couple other presenters here who are going to be sharing important information. Why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves?
Hello, everyone. My name is Erda Dothage, and I am the Director of Strategy and Planning for the UIA.
My name is Tom Yake, and I'm excited to share with you some of the features of MiUI later this presentation.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Erda.
My name is Brandon James. I'm assisting with the walkthrough of the demonstrations.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. Before we jump in, we want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be covering today. So we already kind of shared welcome and introductions. We'll be sharing with you an overview of MiUI, what's coming with that new system, and also talking about some key changes for both employers and third-party administrators. Then we'll be spending much of our time together today giving you live demonstrations on what the new system will look like. And we'll also be giving you tips on what you and your organization can do today to prepare for the launch of this new system. We'll end with sharing some important resources that hopefully many of you are already aware of as they helped you sign up for this presentation today. And we'll be talking about the countdown to MiUI and giving key dates. Before we do that, Erda, I'll turn it over to you to share a message from the UIA.
Thank you, Melody. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to launch this new system. As a reminder, UIA will introduce MiUI in two phases, with our initial phase targeting employers and TPA, and that will launch on December 15th, 2025. The subsequent benefits page, which will impact all users, will launch next year in summer of 2026. One thing we will continue to stress is that both employers and TPAs will continue to use their MyWAM accounts for benefit-related functionality, like protesting or appealing a claim. We hope you will enjoy today's demo, and we want to remind you that some screens may change prior to or after launch. Please make sure that you're checking MiUI University for the most up-to-date information related to this system rollout. Thank you for being here, and we hope you enjoyed the demo.
Thank you so much, Erda, for walking us through some of the key changes and the dates that those are associated with. One of the common questions that we receive is, what was some of the reasons that it was important for UIA to transition to this new modern system? So I'll share a few, and then Erda, I'll invite you to help me cover any of these I missed as well. But hopefully you'll see much of these today. Some of the things that we're going to cover today are a more user-friendly design. So we're going to show you right within MiUI some of the easy navigational features, as well as some of the intuitive design that comes with upgrading to a new and modern system. We're also going to look at some of the updated quarterly wage reporting options. So now you will have 4 options for reporting your quarterly wages, as well as 4 different formats that those can be a part of. Another key feature is that MiUI is going to be mobile friendly. And while this is certainly helpful for all of you employers and TPAs out there, as we move into adding benefits related functionality in the summer of 2026, we know that will be especially helpful to all of the claimants that many of you work with. Erda, any other highlights that you'd like to point out for the group?
I think one of the things I'm most excited about, Mel, is just how human-centered design was built into the system, and that customer experience was a key focus as we were building it out.
Awesome. I think all of these features will hopefully be things that you will see throughout our presentation today, and many more. Before we jump into talking specifically about some of the key changes, did want to share how you may have been hearing from us over the past year, 2 years almost, and because you'll continue to use this information to receive new updated information as we count down to that December 15th launch that Erda talked about, but also well beyond that. So some of the ways that you've been hearing about MiUI are, we have the Employer Advisor newsletter that goes out on a monthly basis, and we started talking about and sharing information about the upcoming modernized system back in early 2024. As we have started getting closer and closer to this launch of the new system, You likely have visited MiUI University, which is the one-stop shop for all of the frequently asked questions, different helpful information about launch. The file format specifications have been out there starting in June, as well as many videos on introductions to MiUI. And as we get closer to launch, you'll also have hopefully seen videos about specific pieces of functionality, such as submitting wage reports or payments. A lot of the same demonstrations that you'll get a chance to view here with us today. Also, we have our MiUI Minute newsletters. These provide high priority information specifically about MiUI and cover new resources that are added, as well as key information that is important for that December transition. Also on MiUI University, you'll see different things such as our employer checklist. That employer checklist has a checklist of all of the information and kind of tasks that should be completed as we prepare for go live. Many of those items on the checklist, we are going to give you additional demonstrations of how to do today, such as how to create your MyLogin account. We're going to talk about the importance of being able to understand how to log into MyWAM and who your system administrator will be. We're also going to reference today many of our quick reference guides that are already out there on MiUI University. Some of those quick reference guides will help understand things like the transition between MyWAM and MiUI during the period where you have two systems. We also have some helpful quick reference guides about specific information such as account maintenance or assigning a TPA. And every month, more and more information and training materials get added. Today, you will likely hear me reference a frequently asked question. That is because as all of you are submitting questions, both during the live sessions of this seminar or through our inbox, we're constantly updating those frequently asked questions to try and get helpful information out to as many people as possible. And then lastly, this seminar. While we are recording today's seminar, there is also live versions being offered multiple times a week in November, December, and some even into January. So thank you so much for joining this one. We hope that you will find it helpful. One of the key changes that I want to make sure that we talk about before we jump into our demonstrations is the transition period that you heard me talk about between when MiUI launches for tax services in December and that benefits functionality that will be added in the summer of 2026. During that time period, there will be two systems, both MyWAM, which you're using today, and MiUI, which will be our new system, that will be used to perform distinct tasks. This period of time will be referred to throughout this presentation as the two-system transition period. As you are in that period, you will need a login for both MyWAM and MiUI. And during that time, I also want to make sure to point out that TPAs will continue to have their MyWAM ID, which is in use today, and they will be assigned a new MiUI TPA that they will use in MiUI and ongoing. We have posted out on MiUI University a helpful quick reference guide that explains in the form of your MyWAM navigation what pieces of MyWAM will be transitioned to MiUI, what will be retired, and which you will continue to perform in MyWAM throughout this time period. One of the asks that we would make of all of you is please make sure to let the users in your agency or organization know that during this two-system transition period, they will have two logins, one for MiUI and one for MyWAM. Those two logins may have a different user ID and password, as these accounts will not sync. But after the launch of benefits functionality in the summer of 2026, you will only use one system, and that will be MiUI. All right, well, let's jump over now and go to our very first system demonstration. And we have 6 different system demonstrations that we've prepared for you today to focus on key functionality in MiUI that will be used by employers. As this is just one of many helpful resources, know that you can continue to visit MiUI University for additional videos or demonstrations on other pieces of functionality. But today, we're going to look at specifically how you will log into MyLogin and create a new MyLogin for Business account, and how you can use that for MiUI. We're going to look at how to activate an existing account for an employer that has an account in MyWAM and will now want to view that information in MiUI. My colleague Tom is going to talk to you about important navigation and how you will navigate through your employer account in MiUI and how to view specific information. We're going to look at if you are an employer that uses a TPA, how you can view who your TPA is, and also how you can add a new TPA and some of the key changes that are happening with that. We are going to go ahead and look at how to submit that quarterly wage report using one of the 4 new file formats. We're also going to talk about what happens if your file format is over 1,000 records, over a certain size, and how that would then be processed with overnight batch processing. And then for our last demonstration, we're going to look at how you can make a payment within MiUI. Let's jump right into our very first demonstration. Our first demonstration is how to create a new MyLogin for Business account. Today in MyWAM, employers and TPAs will have a user ID and password, but it does not need to sync up with MyLogin for Business. Starting with using MiUI, all employers and TPAs will need to create a MyLogin for Business account, which is the state of Michigan's single sign-on service that is used for all sorts of different systems that may be used by employers and TPAs. One of the first things you may want to ask your users is, do you already have a MyLogin for Business account? If so, you do not need to create a new account. You can reuse it for MiUI. The other thing that I'd like to reference is that while you're going to see a helpful demonstration on this, there is also a step-by-step on MiUI University that takes you exactly through what we're going to be covering today. As I shared, all employers and TPAs will now need to create a MyLogin for Business account if they don't already have one. However, this is available live today, right now. So before go live, both employers and TPAs can go and create a MyLogin for Business account. And that's certainly something that I would encourage you to do now. So that way, after the launch of MiUI, you already have one task done in order to be able to launch and use the new system. Another common question that you may be asking yourself is, I am a resident of Michigan. I already have a MyLogin account that I use to manage my Secretary of State or do my taxes. It is very possible that you have a personal MyLogin account that is also called MyLogin for Citizens. This account cannot be used for this business activity. Instead, you will need to create a MyLogin for Business account, and we'll show you what that difference is. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. What you'll be looking at next is a step-by-step on how you would go ahead and create that new MyLogin for Business account. So you may see the screen flash as we jump over into that system. All right, what is showing on your screen in front of you is MyLogin for Business, which again is Michigan's one-stop login solution for all business activity. The first thing that I'll point out to you is right across the top, it says Welcome to MyLogin for Business. That is where you want to make sure that you see that when you're creating this account. Next up, we'll go ahead and click Create an Account. Every other time after this, after you've created your account, you can go ahead and click on Log In, and then you'd be able to use that. After that, what you're going to do here is enter your email into the email field. This is the email you're going to use for your business. So they want to make sure that you're using your business email because after this, we are going to send a code that you will then go ahead and use to create your account. The very first time that you create a MyLogin for Business account, you will have to use CAPTCHA. And so you will select I'm not a robot. And then you might have to go ahead and complete the CAPTCHA, such as selecting whether or not this image is a bus. After this, we'll go ahead and click Next. And you will receive an email with the subject line regarding your MyLogin account email verification. This email is going to create the password that is needed in order to verify this email and continue with creating a MyLogin account. We'll go ahead and enter that password on the password verification page. But if for any reason you were not able to do that, you could click Resend Password and would resend you a new password in order to verify your account. We'll go ahead and move on to our next step though. And this is where you will enter your first and last name. And why this is important is because this is how your MyLogin user ID will be created. Your MyLogin user ID will use your last name, your first initial, and 4 number digits of your choosing. So it will be important that you put in your first and last name because this is what you will have to use in order to create that user ID in a few steps. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. Next thing we'll do is you'll enter a work phone number that you can be called at in order to verify your account and receive a passcode over the phone. If you do not have a work phone number, you should enter any phone number here and then click next step because you can skip verification in the next page. What will happen next is you will receive a phone call to the phone number that you entered, giving you a 6-digit passcode. This phone number may be on caller ID from a city in Texas. It will occur within 2 to 3 minutes after you've requested it. So if you receive a phone call from an unknown number from Texas within a very short period of time after asking for this password and to verify your phone number, you want to answer because this is likely the 6-digit passcode. You'll go ahead and listen to that recording and enter your 6-digit passcode. If you did not have a phone number that you wanted to verify, you could click skip verification at the bottom of the page. But in this case, we will go ahead and confirm our password. And the reason that this is important is because this is how, if you ever needed to reset your MyLogin account password, you would use one of the ways you can do that is to use your phone number. You also have an opportunity to enter your mobile phone number here. It's the exact same process that we just went through. But the only thing that's different is that for your verification, you can receive that by either text or voicemail. And the reason that you want to do this is because one more way that down the road, if you needed to reset your MyLogin account, you would have a mobile phone number to be able to do that with as well. We'll go ahead and send ourselves a text message. A text message will come to that mobile phone number. You'll enter in the passcode. And once you confirm it, this is where you now come to where you're going to enter and create your user ID. You heard me say earlier that your user ID must be last name, first initial, and 4 digits of your choosing. It will also display in a blue box down at the bottom of your screen. This will use the information that you entered earlier in the process in order to recommend your user ID. As you go ahead and create your user ID, notice that the brown text under user ID guidelines is going to change to green as you meet those guidelines. In this case, we've went ahead and entered our user ID. Once all of our guidelines are met and they all turn green, we'll go ahead and click next. Next, you want to go ahead and create your password, and it's exactly the same. As you create your password and they meet those password guidelines are going to switch from brown to green, and that's how you know that you are able to use that password. After this, we'll click Create Account, and this is now where you will receive an email confirming that your MyLogin account has been created. This is the account that you will use to access MiUI ongoing. You'll log into MyLogin, and it will direct you to MiUI in the future. But the only way that the system knows in order to connect you to MyLogin or to MiUI is for you to go request that. So that is exactly what we'll do next. As we click continue and we have finished creating our MyLogin account, we're now going to go ahead and add the MiUI system to this newly created MyLogin ID. After you create your MyLogin ID, you are going to get a MyLogin for Business homepage. For those of you who already have a MyLogin for Business account, you may already have some applications that display for you. In order to add MiUI, you're going to go ahead and click Find Services. You can either type in MiUI, you can type in Michigan Unemployment Agency. This is some of the different ways that you can search. You could also, on the side where it says Filter by Departments, you could select the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity to see all of the systems that are available under WIO. And we can see here that both employers and TPAs have a portal that they can choose. Because everyone attending this seminar is employers, you would choose employers. TPAs would want to make sure to request that third-party administrator portal. In this case, whether or not you've selected employer, you would get that portal where you would agree to the terms and conditions. If you're a third-party administrator, like in this instance, you would get that portal. Then you would want to make sure to carefully review and agree to the terms and conditions, and then select request service. This is a one-time step that you need to do in order to request access to the specific MiUI system. You'll get a message that says your request is being processed, and almost instantaneously, you'll be granted access because this is an automated process. After you click continue, you'll get an email letting you know that your access is approved, and you will now be able to use your MyLogin in order to access the new MiUI system. Because once you go back to your MyLogin for Business homepage, underneath that homepage, you will either have the MiUI employer portal or the third-party administrator portal on your MyLogin for Business homepage. Once you select those, today, you will likely receive this congratulations page. For everyone that goes and does this before go live, this is what you will see. This is a temporary page that will be updated with MiUI after December 15th. There's a lot of really helpful information on here, step-by-step guides, our videos, and a link to that always helpful MiUI University. So this is the page that you will receive letting you know that you have successfully created your MyLogin for Business account and requested access to either the employer or the third-party administrator portal. We've already answered some of our frequently asked questions, but you might be saying, well, what can I do now? Would really encourage everyone who is listening to this seminar to have all of the users within your organization create a MyLogin for Business account if they are going to use MiUI. It is available today, and this way you will be able to confirm all of your users will have access to MiUI when they need it in December. Make sure that after they create that MyLogin for Business account, they add MiUI to the list of services so that way it is available to them every time going forward that they log in. Let's go ahead and transition next to, now that we have a MyLogin for Business, how you would go ahead and use that to access your employer account.
For our next demonstration, we are going to look at how to activate an existing account. This applies to all employers who currently have a MyWAM account today. So many of you who are listening to today's presentation. When MiUI launches, all employers in MyWAM who have existing accounts will have the information in those accounts for the past 10 years transferred over to MiUI. This means that the first time a member of that employer organization logs into MiUI, they will see all of their data for the past 10 years. In order to do this in a secure and easy to communicate manner, UIA will provide an 8-digit activation code in that employer's MyWAM account, and they will use that, their FEIN or FEIN, and their EAN in order to activate their new MiUI account. A frequently asked question I'd like to make sure to answer before we jump into our system demonstration is, who from my member organization should conduct this process? The answer is, it is completely up to you. But you want to make sure that the person who activates your account is going to be your system administrator, because the first person to activate the employer's account will automatically be assigned as the system administrator and be able to then go add additional users to work on behalf of that organization in MiUI. So let's jump right into our demonstration. As a part of the transition from MyWAM to MiUI, in that weekend before go live, a new tab will be added in the account section of MyWAM for employers. This new tab will be called the MiUI activation code. And in it, you will see an 8-digit activation code has been added to your MyWAM account. In order to activate your MiUI account, you will need this code. You will also need to make sure that you have your EAN number. A common question that I receive is, should I use all 10 digits of my EAN number in MyWAM? And the answer is you will use the first 7 because when you activate your organization, you will also be activating all of the different units or locations within that organization. So you activate by FEIN number. So you do not have to activate by each location, just by FEIN number by using the first 7 digits of your EAN. Now, let's see what that would look like. So in this instance, we will assume we already have created our MyLogin for Business account, just like you saw us do in the last demonstration. Log into MyLogin using that MyLogin for Business account you created. And every time you launch MiUI, you will agree to the terms and conditions. And then the very first time that you log in, you will see 3 options. Register employer is for brand new employers. Activate user profile is for individual users. And employer account initiation is what you will do to activate an account that you previously had in MyWAM that is being transferred to MiUI. I do want to point out that if you are a person who has different businesses that you own or that you manage that have different FEIN numbers, you can activate those businesses the same way, all attributed to your same MiUI user ID. And that's what it looks like on this page. In this example, our user has already activated 4 businesses, and now they're going to go do the next one. So if you go ahead and click on Employer Account Initiation, this is where you will enter the information that we've discussed. You must enter that business's FEIN number, the first 7 digits of your EAN number for your organization in MyWAM. Lastly, you will enter that 8-digit activation code that will be added to your MyWAM account. After this, you click Authenticate, and you will get a success message that lets you know that you successfully activated your account. You only have to do this one time. Every other time when you log in, you will be brought right to your homepage, which is what you're seeing on the screen in front of you. And this is how you activate your account, and all existing information for the last 10 years will be transferred over, so you can now view it in MyWAM instead of MiUI. You may be asking, well, what can I do now? It will be very important that prior to the launch of MiUI, that you confirm that you are able to log into your existing MyWAM account. This is the only way you will be able to retrieve your 8-digit activation code. You must have this code in order to activate your MiUI account. So it is a great idea to go and make sure that your username and password are accurate and that you can log into MyWAM before you need it on December 15th. Also, make sure that you know your organization's EAN, which you can find in MyWAM, and your FEIN number. TPAs will follow this same process, but we know that some TPAs use your SSN or your FEIN number. You'll be able to use both of those, whatever you're currently using today. Lastly, make sure you discuss as an organization who is going to be your system administrator, because that should be the person who completes this step. They will automatically be assigned as a system administrator, and then they can go ahead and add additional users. Now we'll transition, and Tom will take us through how do we navigate the employer account we just activated.
Now that we've seen how to activate your MiUI account, the first thing to pay attention is that in MiUI, employers, TPAs, and staff will all use one system. But what that system looks like and what you can do in it will depend on what type of role you have, either an employee of the UIA, a TPA, or an employer. Employers in particular can use their homepage to quickly review any notifications, submit their wage report, or even make a payment. They'll use the left navigation menu for everything else. Real quick with some other highlights. the notification center, which you'll see shortly, will indicate if there are any balances or wage reports that need to be rectified. And once more time, UIA staff and TPAs will see a similar view to what an employer will see, but they're not the same. Brandon, let's go to the employer homepage. The first thing I want to draw your attention to are the bold blue letters at the top that say TRN. That's the name of our company. On the top, you're also able to see EAN and the DBA associated with this company. Below that are three large blocks of the three main things employers would want to see in MiUI. The first is the account status. You can see that giant green circle, that TRN is active. They're also able to see in bright, bold red numbers the amount due on my account. And it looks like TRN has about $26,000 due. We can also see the last time quarterly wages were reported, and that was in Q1 of 2025. Finally, we're able to make a payment by clicking on the Make a Payment button. On the right side of our account status box is our notification center. This will give me a live count of all the outstanding notifications I need to resolve. This one says 1 because I have an outstanding balance on my account. Below the account status box is wage reporting. These are two quick links for you to either file a report or to view your wage history. Below that gives some details about this employer's account. We're able to see the FEIN, the liability date, the current rate, the NAICS code, and we're also able to have a quick access to account maintenance. Brandon, do me a solid and click on account maintenance. The account maintenance tab will give us additional information about this account. It's going to include our identification information, liability, status, our current rate, account business information, and finally, any active reporting units. In MiUI, a reporting unit is the locations of your business. So if TRN had a second location, let's say in Detroit, it would have a second unit reporting number. But since this only has one location in Tustin, we only have one reporting unit. Brandon, thanks for showing us that page. But let's go back up to the top and get back to our employer homepage. Well, as we continue to scroll down, if TRN had an associated TPA, we'd be able to see it here, as well as when those services began and what roles are granted to that TPA. Brandon, we can go ahead and collapse that. And the final thing on the homepage is training materials and guided assistance. When I click Expand, this will take the employer to MiUI University by clicking on Training Materials. Here you'll have a whole suite of things to do to learn about MiUI. Brandon, our homepage visit is complete, so let's go back up to the top. The next part of the homepage is the left navigation menu. This is where you'll take and complete most of your action in MiUI. The first tab is for account maintenance. Here you'll be able to view more about your account, maintain your owners and officers. You can change your reporting method, maintain your third-party administrators, can change your CECL status, view your rate notice, and do a slew of other activities to maintain your account. Below that is benefit charge activities. This is where I can search for benefit charges or see my rate year summary. Below that, protest and appeal. Below that is correspondence. This is where I can view any correspondence sent to this employer. Below that is wage detail reporting. This includes another way to submit your wages, as well as seeing other activities associated with wage reporting. Below that is payment information. Again, like wage reporting I can do from the home page, I can also do it from the left navigation menu and see other associated activities with payment, including searching for a payment or even canceling a payment if it's not too late. We then have submit record request, view record requests, our WOTC for work opportunity tax credit. We can search an application and do bulk application filing. And finally, contact us. This is where you can contact UIA. You can submit your query and then see when they have followed up by searching for that query. Now that we've seen the employer homepage, what can you do next? Well, go back to MiUI University. Here you'll have some training videos that will help you learn how to navigate your account and do even more activities in MiUI. Mel, passing it back to you.
For our next discussion, we are going to talk about how third-party administrators, or TPAs, are assigned to an employer in MiWAM so they may work on behalf of that employer. This is one of the biggest changes that is coming with the transition from MiWAM to MiUI. With MiUI, employers are able to actively manage their TPA relationships, including deciding who can work on their behalf, specifically for what types of actions that TPA can do on their behalf, and also for what dates. How employers will assign a TPA to work on their behalf is by using the TPA ID. In MiUI, TPAs will get a new TPA ID that is different than their ID currently used in MiWAM. And it will be important that employers work with their TPA to understand what their TPA's new ID is, so that way they may make that connection in MiWAM. For the majority of TPAs, employers must be the people who do this assignment. The exception is for PEOs and fiscal intermediaries, and also those with powers of attorneys, depending on their role. You can associate yourself to an employer by submitting the proper documentation. All other TPAs, which are called employer representative, must require the employer to log in and make that association. And we are going to look at that demonstration together as a part of this presentation. So let's talk a little bit more about these TPA permissions and how it relates to employer engagement. When we use the term TPA, or third-party administrator in MiWAM, it is referring to a professional employer organization, or a PEO, a fiscal intermediary, you may see this referred to as an FI within MiUI, an employer representative, or reimbursing employer groups. For these organizations, they will now have a TPA ID, which will dictate what they can do on behalf of the employer they're partnered with. For employer representatives, employers will now approve the role and time period that this TPA can work on their behalf. This gives employers the ability to independently manage those relationships because they can grant a TPA access or edit it at any time. Also, and this is the big change, employers can only have one TPA working on their behalf per quarter per type of role permission. For example, an employer may not have two TPAs who are authorized to submit wage reports on their behalf for the same quarter. They must now designate one TPA who may do this on their behalf. But they may have one for quarter one, and then they could change it so a different TPA could do this for quarter two. They could also say there is no end date, and the same TPA could act on their behalf ongoing. A very common question is, what does this look like at the launch of MiUI in December? Will my employer and TPA relationships be brought over from MiWAM? In order to help with this process, as part of the transition from MiWAM to MiUI, UIA is going to attempt to convert all of those employer and TPA relationships from MiWAM to MiUI, including WOTC TPAs. The exception to this is if an employer has 2 or more assigned TPAs in MiWAM, that means that UIA have to choose which one would be assigned to the employer, when really that is a decision that the employer would know. And so in this case, the employer would not be added to that TPA's record, and that relationship would not be made. And the employer must log in and grant permission to that TPA after the launch of MiUI on December 15th. For all other TPA and employer relationships, if there isn't a conflict, it will be transitioned from MiWAM to MiUI. But another important note is that as a part of that relationship, the role permissions that will be assigned to that TPA are the ability to update and submit payments and submit wage reports or employment and wage details. It would be what it would be called in MiUI. This means that if an employer and a TPA relationship is able to be established automatically as a part of that go live, that TPA will have the ability to submit payments and wage reports on behalf of the employer. For all other types of permissions, such as account maintenance or enable to view benefit charges, the employer must log into MiUI and specifically grant that TPA permission to act on their behalf. And this does include employers who are only participating in the WOTC program. They should also log in and verify the permissions of their TPA. And please view MiUI University for more and detailed information on this one-time activation process at Go Live. Before we jump into our system demonstration, a couple key reminders. One is that while there can only be one TPA who is able to take action for a specific time period for an employer, you can grant TPAs view access, but not edit for the same permission. That means that I can have 2 TPAs for the same time period, as long as only one of them can be taking the action, but the other may be able to view information. The next thing you may be asking is, who can establish this employer and TPA relationship? The answer to that is, in your organization, if an employer is able to log in and handle account maintenance, they will also be able to add or update the permissions of TPAs. Let's jump in and see what this will look like. So what we're looking at now is we've logged in as an employer and we can see our homepage. One of the first places that you can go to look and view your TPA relationships is on the homepage. If you can scroll down, we'll see under associated TPAs, if we expand this, you'll be able to see all existing TPA relationships. Notice that we don't currently have any. Well, let's go ahead and add one. How we would add one is, if we scroll up, using our left navigation, under account maintenance, we will go ahead and select Maintain Third-Party Administrator Authorization. On this page, this is where you would be able to search for any existing or previous TPAs using their name, TPA, or role. Please note, this is only TPAs that have previously or currently been assigned to your organization, not all TPAs within Michigan. If we wanted to search for TPAs assigned to our organization, we would just click search. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and establish a new relationship. So we'll go ahead and select new. As we enter our TPA ID, this is the ID that we must receive from our TPA. If you are unsure of your employer's TPA, you must make sure to contact it and get them from them. But please note, TPAs will not have this ID until the launch of MiUI on December 15th. This is not something that they will know prior to go live. On the next page, you'll see the ID of the TPA we entered, as well as their name. This is to confirm that you are assigning the correct TPA. If we scroll down, we're going to go ahead and choose a begin date for the roles we're going to add. We'll also choose an end date, or you can choose to leave this end date ongoing, and that means that the TPA will be able to act on your behalf until you log back into MiUI and provide an end date. You will see above the TPA services begin date field, there is direction on what dates can be recorded. And an important thing to note is that begin date must start on a calendar quarter. So that's January, April, July, or October 1st. It must also end at the end of a quarter. The reason for this is to avoid any overlap between TPA organizations. You may also be asking, can I submit a date in the past? The answer is yes. You can submit a date in the past and provide that TPA access to act on your behalf starting at a date in the past. After you put an end date in, we're going to go down here under assigned roles. You can choose to select assign all edit roles at the bottom and give a TPA permission to act on your behalf to do all actions such as account maintenance, view or edit benefit charges, submit employment and wage details, submit payments, or you can choose to assign them a specific role, which is what we're going to do. So we're going to go ahead and only provide them the ability to edit or update our account information. So we'll only select edit account maintenance. If we wanted to see more about what we are assigning this TPA to do, we can click on the hyperlink of the role name. A pop-up displays telling me the things that a TPA can do. In this case, we know they could do things like update owner offer information, request a liability date change. All of this will display here for you so that you can view what this role permission includes before assigning. All we have to do next is scroll down to the bottom, click Save, and we can see the information that we've saved up here at the top. Now that you've assigned it, you will see a role saved successfully message at the top of the page. And now if we go back to our home page and we view that TPA role permissions section again, we will now see our associated TPA with the information we just provided. This is something that we would suggest that you do as an employer the very first time that you log into MiUI. This is where you will see any TPA associations that have been brought over from MyWAM, and you can check and make sure that your TPA assignments and their corresponding role permissions and dates are what you would like them to be. You'll also notice that this happened almost instantaneously. So this is not done through an overnight batch process. It happens within minutes. So that means that not only could this TPA work on your behalf almost immediately, but you and your organization will now display in their TPA account after you click Save and provide them with the correct role permissions. And this concludes our demonstration of how to assign a TPA and view how they've been associated to your account. So what can you do now in order to make sure that you're prepared to have the proper TPA and employer relationships after the launch of MiUI? The first is make sure that you review the TPA roles, and there is helpful guides on MiUI University so you know what access they should have in MiUI. Also, be prepared to log into MiUI on December 15th to view or assign your desired permissions to your TPA. How will you be able to log in? You will use that account activation that we looked at earlier in our demonstration in order to then go activate your account and see what TPAs may have automatically been assigned to you based on the information in MyWAM, or you can then ask your TPA for their ID in order to assign them to your account as desired.
For our next demonstration, we are going to look at how to submit a wage report using one of the 4 new file formats and one of the 4 available filing methods. Beginning with the launch of MiUI on December 15th, all quarterly wage reports, both the ones submitted for the future and the ones in the past, are going to be submitted in MiUI. And there are 4 new file format types that are available: Limited, ISESA, EFW2, and XML. Every TPA and employer will need to file with one of these 4 types, and they are all new as the formats in MyWAM were specific to that system. In June 2025, there was file format specifications that were launched and available on MiUI University. So if you plan to submit your file or your wage reports by file upload, you have these 4 options, and you can find all of those file specifications on MiUI University. If you do not plan to submit by file upload, you do not need one of these 4 options. Instead, you have the ability to copy from a previous quarter after you manually enter a quarter. There are quick reference guides and videos
out on MiUI University, there is also the ability to test your file format using the file format validation tools, which we will look at together. A couple common questions that we receive is there a file size limit? There is. The file size limit for one file is 50 megabytes. So you may have to submit more than one file if your file is over that size. If your file has over 1,000 records, it will be processed using overnight batch process, and we will go ahead and look at what that looks like in this next demonstration. So let's jump right in and see what it would look like to submit our wage report using one of the new file format options. We're going to go ahead and submit a wage report for this employer. Over along the left navigation, you can see that underneath wage report or wage detail reporting, we have our wage submission. This is what you will access. Now, next up, you will see that first thing we're going to choose is choose a reporting period. After we choose the reporting period and what quarter and year we would like to submit this report for, we can choose file upload. We can choose to manually enter it if you have a small number of employees. You can copy from a previous quarter if not a lot has changed. You may also need to say, I actually don't have any employment or wages this quarter. There are training materials and step-by-steps on how to do all of these on MiUI University, and there will be by Go Live. However, in this case, we are going to focus on doing a file upload. So let's go ahead and choose our previous quarter. We're going to do this for quarter 3. And I'm going to go ahead and select file upload. Next, using the file format specifications, I would have created what my file format. It could be delimited, it could be ISESA. We know those are the two most common. Up under reporting information, the quarter that and the year that I chose is going to display, and I'll go ahead and select which option I want to use. A common question I receive is, if I use delimited one quarter and I want to use ISESA the next, is that possible? The answer is absolutely. You get to choose how you would like to submit the wage report. In addition, you'll see we have some helpful information under record length and file extension to guide this process. Next, you'll go ahead and choose your file just like you normally would if you were, say, attaching a file to an email. You'll find it on your computer. Go ahead and select which file you'd like to use. Immediately, the file name and the size of your file displays here. This can be really helpful because, as I shared, there will be a 50 megabyte limit. We'll go ahead and select next. And the next thing that you're going to get a chance to do is preview all of the information that is in your file. And notice a few things. The first is that if you submitted a delimited format, which we did, the record number, if that there was either an error or non-error, will display. I have went through and went down to the file errors section. This tells me that on the second line of my delimited format, I do have an employee last name that's missing. And I like to draw your attention to this error type. Once you submit a file for file upload, it will automatically tell you any errors, and it will categorize them as fatal or non-fatal. Non-fatal means you can go ahead and still submit this record. For example, if it's a employee last name missing, if it is no SSN, those are considered non-fatal, and you can still submit the file and correct those errors afterwards. The policy for the time and the process to correct those errors has not changed. If it is a fatal error, and an example of this would be a duplicate SSN, then you would not be able to submit that record, but you could submit all of the other records that we saw up at the top that had no issues. If you have over 25% of a file that has fatal errors, you will not be able to submit, and instead you'll need to correct the entire file. In this case, we have the option to ignore and continue. We can make corrections and resubmit, which is what we're going to do. Or if we had some waiver or an affidavit for missing information, we could share that as well. Next, we're going to go ahead and make corrections and resubmit. Once we do that, all we have to do is, you'll notice it takes us back to the previous page. We're going to keep our same file format. I'm going to go ahead and choose a file. But now I'm going to either open up my previous file. In this case, I have a new one prepared that corrects those errors. Again, we get the name and the size type. And now once we click next, we'll see that we have all of our records that have displayed, and the second record is showing up here, and we have no errors displaying. So you can see right away if there are any errors in your file, what type of errors it might be, and you have the choice to correct them or submit your report as is. Once we select next, we are going to see a summary of the information that we've just submitted. So we can see here what was the number of records, what was the total gross wages included in the records, how many of these employees were working on the 12th of the month. We know that's important for DOL reporting. And we have all of this as a summary for us. When we click next, you'll see we're at the end of the section, and up at the top, steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been turning green as we completed them. We're on the certification step now, and this is where we can see a summary of all of the information that we have available. We have information such as what's your contributory rate, what's your interest, and down at the bottom, you have your total, or up at the top, you had your total gross wages, and at the bottom, it has the quarterly amount due. This is where you will certify your wage detail, and this tells you all of the information based on the wages you reported. In this case, I'm going to certify that this information is correct and click Submit. You'll be prompted if you want to edit any previous wage reports, and they'll display here for you. I don't have any edits that I want to make to previous wage reports. So in this case, what will happen is not only do I get a confirmation right here, this is where you get that confirmation number, but also if I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could make a payment. This is how you would work through all the way through from choosing which type of wage report you'd like to make to putting in the information and correcting any reports, and finally seeing a summary of that information and certifying it as well. If you had uploaded a file that had over 1,000 records, or if a TPA more than 5 employers, you would have received a message that said, the uploaded file is larger than the limit and it's going to be processed overnight. This means that you have to wait until 8 a.m. the next day, and then on the View Submission History page, you could see the results of that wage report submission. If you go to the submission history page prior to 8 a.m. the next business day, you would see a summary of your submission, but it would say pending, and there would be no confirmation number. Then by 8 a.m. the next morning, because it processes overnight, you would see on that same page, the status will say processed, and you will receive a confirmation number. Not only that, but that confirmation number, it will be a hyperlink that will give you a report of any errors that were included in the report. So in either real time for files less than 1,000 records, or in overnight, you get to see that your wage report was submitted and immediately see all of the errors that potentially could be included. But you don't have to wait until after go live in order to test this. Out on MiUI University, there is actually a wage format file validation tool. It's right on the homepage, and it's where employers and TPAs can go to test their file formats. If you want to go ahead and test your file format, we strongly encourage it because this will give you confidence that your chosen file format, whether it be ISESA or delimited or XML, is going to work once you go to submit your first report in MiUI in January 2026. A couple key notes about the validation tool. If your file is valid, you will go ahead and you'll get a valid file green message. If your file is valid, but some of the test data that you included had errors, you'll actually go ahead and see some of the error messages. And then if the file format wasn't correct, you will see, or it was over, in this case, 100 records for the test. It's 1,000 records in MiUI. You'll get this red error message. So let's go ahead and look at MiUI University and see what this would look like. So it is live and available for you to test right now, right here on MiUI University, and you're going to see that flash across your screen in a moment. If you scroll down on MiUI University, go to the employer and TPA section, which hopefully you're very familiar with. And there's a section called Quarterly Wage Report File Testing. Click on this, and you'll actually be taken to a page that has all of the file format specifications that have been available since June. A very important reminder to not upload any actual information. This should just be a test file. And then if you can click on Submit a Test Wage Report, what you will see is a page that looks very, very similar to what I just showed you in MiUI, the system. Here, you can upload a test file, just like we did, and you'll get one of those messages that I just shared, whether or not the file is valid or if some corrections need to be made. We strongly encourage everyone to go out and test this as a part of the must-dos prior to go live on December 15th. So what can you do now in order to prepare? You can review the file format instructions, then choose one of the 4 formats, and please go test it on MiUI University so that way you know that the file format is correct for when you want to put in real data after go live. And this concludes our presentation of how to submit a wage report. The next thing that we're going to look at is how to submit a payment in MiUI. In MiUI, employers and TPAs that they give the proper role permission to can submit payments. MiUI recognizes a lot of different payment types. You can choose to make a loose payment, which is you choose the amount. You could create a payment plan. You can create quarterly report payments. And both ACH credit and ACH debit are going to continue to be available to you. So let's jump in and take a look at what it would look like if we were to do a payment by ACH credit. First thing that you will do is you will log into your home page. Now we can see on our home page the payment amount that is currently owed. So this will always show the payment amount that is due as well as the last quarter that you submitted a wage report. Next, we're going to select payment information from the dropdown on our left navigation, and we're going to pay our current outstanding balance. Next, what happens is all of the outstanding balances by quarter are going to show up in a summary page. You can select the radio button next to the quarter where you would like to make a payment, and then select Make Payment. What will happen next is a summary of the payment that you selected is going to display for you here. For those of you who choose to make your payment by ACH credit, this is where you're going to select the fact sheet hyperlink that is bolded and we have a blue box around, because this will actually jump and give you instruction to the FS 154 Employer Electronic Payment Options. On this hyperlink, this fact sheet will open and you will find step-by-step instructions on how to complete the ACH payment. And this is how you would make a payment by ACH credit. We also encourage you to go out to MiUI University, where starting in December 2025, you will be able to view a step-by-step on how to make a payment by ACH debit. All right, well, we've looked at a lot of information available out on MiUI University today, as well as viewed some key changes happening with the transition from MiWAM to MiUI, and viewed a series of demonstrations on how employers will manage their accounts and perform actions in MiUI. As we think through how to prepare for Go Live, there are some key resources that we want to make sure to point out to you. Another helpful handout that you can now find on MiUI University is the MiUI Must Do. These are actions that we're strongly encouraging you to take now in order to prepare for a smooth transition to MiUI. And we've talked about all 5 of these things in our presentation today. Please make sure that your future system administrators and any other users go ahead and create that MyLogin for Business account now so they're prepared to use MiUI. Please confirm you have access to your MyWAM account. You must be able to log into your MyWAM account in order to get the activation code to initiate your MiUI account. Please review and update any contact information or payment methods in MyWAM. Make sure that you're aware of the current TPA you work with, if you do work with a TPA, and start thinking about what role assignments you would like to give them in MiUI so they can continue to work on your behalf. And lastly, if you're going to submit a wage report by file upload, please review the wage report file formats, create your file, and you can go test it right out there on MiUI University using the wage report file format validation tool. Also, please continue to use all of the resources that are out on MiUI University, that are in MyWAM, that are being sent to you if you signed up for those notifications. We've got information that's being added to MiUI University multiple times a week in order to help share information. Particularly, I'd like to point out the videos that have a lot of the information that we've went over today, but in short format, as well as with some frequently asked questions. Make sure that you've signed up for the Employer Advisor newsletter, because then you will receive the newsletter, the MiUI Minute. We have a series of step-by-step trainings, as well as quick reference guides. And please continue to look in MyWAM and make sure you can access it, because there will be helpful information posted there as control messages or through web notices. We've went over a lot of frequently asked questions today, but wanted to make sure to remind you, as you send in questions, we're going ahead and updating the frequently asked questions out on MiUI University. Make sure to be visiting those to find answers, either from questions you submitted or that other employers have submitted that may be helpful to you. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us to learn about MiUI.